Hello everyone, my name's Noldy and welcome to this Smash Online series. It's my pleasure to be presenting today with the support of some of the team from this Fonterra Sustainability team. So welcome along. It's my absolute pleasure to thank our sponsors once again as we start. I'd like to thank Rabobank, Pioneer, Balance and FMG for all the support they give us throughout Smash, and they've been with us for many, many years, and we really appreciate their support. And of course, Dairy NZ is our industry partner, and we thank Dairy NZ for their support as well. Without their help, this wouldn't be possible. So we've been doing the online series for a little while now, and as I said today, we've got some experts from Fonterra, and today we're going to be talking about the cooperative difference, and also mainly about the farm insights report, and to try and get a bit of an understanding on how that works and what benefits we can get from it. So today with me, I have Ash, Gavin, Daniel, and Matt, and they're going to be presenting in turn. But yeah, hi guys, but I'll let them introduce themselves because I haven't met a lot of them personally. I do know Ash. So Ash, I'm going to pass it over to you now, and you might like to introduce yourself, and then we'll get right into it. And just before we do go any further, if you've got any questions, please feel free to type them in and we'll endeavour to ask them along the way as we go. So cool. Ash, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Noldy. Good to...
Cool. We've got some technical difficulties, have we?
Yeah, bit of a dodgy connection. I might just shift my position in the house.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having us along, Noldy. It's
good. Cool.
Great to be here. And yeah, the purpose of today really is to talk about the Farm Insights report, which is something relatively new for Fonterra. So we've delivered these to all our suppliers as of end of September. They all went out. So hopefully some of your members have seen them come across their desks. And yeah, we're gonna run through what the value of them is and the kind of information that farmers can hopefully get out of their reports. So I'll just share that and hopefully it'll pop up.
So Ash, these reports are new. So just before you kick off, are you going to share, like, I'm curious as to how this is going to help my business along the way. Is that, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information in here and information's good, but what's the actual benefit of having it?
Yeah, so I guess a lot of the benefits are really about identifying opportunity and helping our farmers to further optimize their business looking into the future. But there are some kind of shorter term tangible benefits, and particularly in the environment space that I think it'll be Matt that talks about those actually. So I'll save that bit for Matt to talk about.
Okay.
But I guess the key point for me really is that Fonterra, we ask a lot of our suppliers in terms of information that you guys have to provide to us. You know, there's a lot of paperwork you do every year and you provide a lot of stuff to us, which is really valuable for the co-op, and we need that to do what we do. But this is really an opportunity to reflect some of that back to you as farmers, to say the data that you provide to us doesn't just go into a vacuum, it is actually really valuable. And so can we provide some of that value back to you through delivering services and insights like this report?
Cool.
Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. So the format of today's chat, I'll do a quick run through what's in the report and who's going to talk about what. So I'll just do a quick intro on that first page there. Then there are 3 pages worth of nitrogen stuff that Gavin's going to talk to us about. Then we'll hand over to Matt to have a chat through the 2 greenhouse gas emissions pages. Then Matt's going to hand over to Daniel, who's going to talk us through the 2 milk pages, and then Daniel will hand back to me to finish up with the 3 animal pages. So obviously quite a bit to get through in kind of a cast of thousands. Apologies for that, but we just thought it would be great if you could kind of have those of us with a particular interest and expertise in each area to talk through them.
Cool.
So I'll just open up with a quick chat through this introductory page. This is I guess the first page in the report, and you can see the top part there talks about some cooperative difference stuff. Would really love to talk to you and your farmers more about the cooperative difference, but we're probably just a little bit time pressed to spend too much time dwelling on that today. So if that's okay, we'll park that part of it and just focus in on that key box at the bottom there, which is the key information about the farm that you've told us through the records that you provide. And it's really important that you check that this information is correct, because I guess if there's an error in here, maybe you put in an extra zero or forgot a full stop somewhere, that will end up throwing out the information through the rest of the report. So this is kind of a key place to just sense check it. Do these numbers look correct for your farm? Because that's really what the report is drawing on for the rest of the information within it. That's all I want to say about that, and I'm going to hand it directly over to Gavin from our environment team to talk us through some of the information from the nitrogen pages. Gavin.
Sweet. Thank you, Ash, and welcome, Gavin.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Ash. Thanks for having me. Cool. So this is a section that is essentially focused on the nitrogen side of things, so that risk or associated with nitrogen loss on the farm. So when we look at this, it's broken down into a couple of pieces, and the first piece is an equation, if you like, that talks us through the purchased nitrogen surplus. So this is the amount of nitrogen that is brought onto the farm in both fertilizer and feed, minus what leaves in those productive outputs, and you're left with a surplus in the farm system. And it's this surplus that is essentially at risk of being lost either to water or to the atmosphere. So having an understanding about that surplus and what it is a really good way to start to manage that risk. And so it's a focus on the purchase surplus, so it doesn't include nitrogen that is fixed from the atmosphere. So this is directly what's in the farmer's control. So once we know the number, and we can see on this farm that the number is 38, we can sort of have a look at, was that good, bad, or otherwise, and how do I stack up, if you like, against a peer group. And so we've got 3 seasons of data that we can display here on the chart. And this farm is the blue dot throughout those seasons, and with the number at the top of the chart there. So you can see that it is sort of slightly increasing over those 3 seasons. And the grey area, if you like, in this chart, the grey box, that represents 50% of the people within this particular region and doing similar milk solids or similar production per hectare to this particular farm. So they can see that they're in that bottom quartile, so below that that average. So pretty low risk in that sense, and that looking at that trajectory and having a quick look at that data, some of that can be attributed to a bit more fertilizer being used, and as the seasons have gone on, and a bit of an increase in the amount of nitrogen, or if you like, imported feed, and therefore nitrogen coming into the system, but with a relatively stable production. So as those other inputs have been added, there hasn't been a big shift in production, and therefore the surplus is crept up there. So if we drop down to the next part of the report, you'll see that it's a bit of a slider and an indication of the high level risk. So these are against management practices. So these are 6 management practices that contribute to nitrogen loss risk on farm, and just an overall as to where they sit. So you can see it's pretty low risk here, but stock is driving the majority of the risk in this situation on this farm. If we skip to the next page, this will be the full nitrogen risk scorecard. So it's a bunch of practices that occur on farm and how they are risk rated. So we're just going to focus on a couple due to some of the time constraints that we have. But if we skip through, we'll see that at the top is the overall risk for how stock is managed, if you like, on the property. So that's that's depicted at the top. So the top for each of these risk factors is the overall risk. Then going to drop down into the next one down, which is this is the sort of the main driver, and it's always depicted with the blue flag. So that indicates that this is driving most of the risk for this particular risk factor, being stock management. No surprises, it's stocking rate. And so the amount of animals on the property is going to drive a significant amount of risk in terms of nitrogen loss. So that nitrogen being returned and excreted in urine, etc. If we move down again, just on that as well, and it does show that it's not just the milking herd. We've put the cows per hectare there, just more as another indicator, but it is in looking at total animals on the property.
Gavin, just briefly. Sorry, Gavin. So to get down closer to the green, can we punch a number in there? What's the number that we need to have to get down to that? Can we? How do we work that out? To get down closer to the green.
So it's not a matter of
3.
Yeah, so this farm is in the higher sort of stocking rate, and therefore with that is going to be some inherent risk. Cows, in pasture are going to bring that risk. So it's not necessarily about making this entire report green. It's about having those risks just identified, and they may be being really well mitigated and managed, but it's still the report's still going to tell us where the inherent risk lies. So it's not a matter of saying it must all be green. It's just it's from the data given to us each season through the farm dairy records. It's an assessment of that risk.
Okay.
And so
thank you.
And we can see how some of those things are mitigated though as we move down. So the next part of the risk that's I guess driven from the animal is not just how many animals there are, but in fact how much they're eating. So as we know, difference between a Friesian and a Jersey is going to be different risks to different sized animals, and also then the amount of dry matter that animal eats is going to dictate how much protein they ingest, and then how much of that is actually returned or excreted back in urine patches. So this metric here isn't focusing on high pasture growth is bad. It's simply saying this is how much dry matter was eaten. The more the animal eats, the more there will be a risk of nitrogen being lost or excreted in urine. The breakdown below is really just to show you where that dry matter is coming from, not to call out one over the other necessarily as bad. And it gives some clarity there as well around what is imported versus what is grown on the farm. So we can see here that a majority of this is grown in crops and pasture. Again, some other crops and pasture are imported. And the all other feeds part there is, that would be the likes of concentrates, grains, PKEs, those types of things that aren't grown on farms. So these two are really driving a fair amount of that risk on farm in terms of our stock management and in this situation for this particular farm.
Great, thank you. That's awesome.
Cool. I think we hand over to Matt from here.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Gavin. Matt, come in. We look forward to hearing from you. Welcome.
Thanks, team. Thanks, Noldy. Just give me a thumbs up. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, good as gold.
Yep, perfect. Ash mentioned a little bit earlier, that the focus here is about how we can improve or be, more efficient and lower our footprint. So, look, with emissions, the first step is understanding, what that actually means. Where I am now. So this focuses on farm level greenhouse gas emissions. So, look, the intent here is to help you to know your numbers, identify potential efficiencies and options to improve. So, what the emissions section does is provide you an overview of the biological emissions profile for your farm. And so what we mean by that is the emissions consisting of methane and nitrous oxide. And so they're reported as CO2 equivalent, so you can compare apples with apples. So they're calculated with what we call the AIMS model. So that's the agricultural inventory model. That's a model that's owned by MPI. It's relatively simple, but very consistent with perhaps more complex models like Overseer, but without being quite so onerous in terms of data requirements. So we've sought to, what could we use given the information that our farmers already provide us. So what we're trying to do here is to support you to understand what it means for your farm. So you can see, your overall emissions per hectare, then broken down into methane and nitrous oxide. So you can see here, probably the takeaway here on this first piece is just, seeing the proportion of methane here in the farm profile, pretty significant. If we then perhaps click down to the next one, you can start to see, the contributions for the relevant sources on farm, whether that's enteric methane or effluent and the likes. So I guess an example of this, say if we were looking at, say, a housed cow system, they would typically have a greater proportion of methane from effluent, see down the left-hand side there. Compared with, say, a grass-based, on pasture system. So I guess the reason why that's useful is to kind of identify and appreciate, how your footprint is made up. So perhaps for those who have been following the media recently and have seen Ravensdown's EcoPond technology, then it might be more relevant if you've got a really high proportion of your footprint is around effluent. However, for this farm, you can probably see that the effluent system is pretty low proportion of profile. If we carry on to the next one, please, Ash. You can start to see, we similar to as Gav talked about with nitrogen, we benchmark against relevant peer groups. So at the top graphic there, follows obviously really similar methodology. You can see that's per hectare at the top, so an indication of your absolute emissions per hectare. So that's the government focus, and we're talking about the Zero Carbon Act and the likes. And then underneath that, at a per kilogram milk solids, which provides an indication of your efficiency opportunities. And obviously the reason we've kind of got the two metrics there is obviously the top one, emissions is a global challenge, at an absolute level, and that's what the focus is on, from a regulatory perspective. But clearly, our customers are really deeply focused on the efficiency piece. So we need to, we need to ensure that we don't lose sight of that as well, and we don't just, drive down our absolute emissions by simply dropping production. We need to keep a focus on being more efficient. So for this farm, you can see is probably slightly higher than average for this benchmark, but within those, within the grey box, so within the 75th and 25th percentiles, and pretty close to the middle of the curve around efficiency. So, I guess for this farm, we would say compared to peer group is pretty close to those benchmarks. Probably focus here is going to be broadly on efficiency, so things like conversion of fertilizer to grass, maximising our per cow efficiency. And what I mean by that is getting the most production out of the fixed costs, if you like, or fixed emissions maintenance costs of running a cow. So that's probably the focus here. But this farm's looking is looking pretty good. And then the last piece in the report there, in the dark blue box, is just some further information about the primary sector climate action partnerships. So that's He Waka Eke Noa, and some QR codes that we can scan there and go away and look for some, if people want to get a little bit deeper, or conversely jump on the phone and give their sustainable dairying advisor a call. I'll probably park it there, Noldy.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, just briefly. So when we do our we have to do our environmental plans for fun. We're all going to have to do them now or in time. Is this information? Is this good enough to go in there, or does it have to be verified, or can we use this information for our plans for the fund?
Yep. So look, absolutely. Still waiting a little bit more detail to come out of He Waka Eke Noa, but look, we're absolutely focused on making sure that the services and tools that we provide our farmers meet those standards. So we have had our equivalency standard. That's what they talk about in He Waka Eke Noa for our farm environment plans. That's all been approved. So look, we our farmers that are looking to take advantage of our tools and services, then that absolutely meets the mark.
Yeah, so that's really beneficial. So we're fortunate to once a year we put in all our data, as long as we keep our records along the way, and then Fonterra takes it from there and assists us with our farm environmental plan. So it makes it less onerous. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Cool.
Yep.
Oh, good. Oh, thanks very much, Matt. That's awesome. Yep, good. And we'll move on now to is Daniel next? Is he? Yeah, Daniel. Hi, Daniel.
Yeah. Cheers, Noldy.
G'day, Daniel. What's your role, Daniel?
So my role, I'm in a similar team to Ash, so the on-farm excellence team within Fonterra. So I'm specifically in the milk part. So program lead. So spending a bit of time working on these insights reports and just trying to link some of that data back to farmers. So if we look at this section, I guess what we wanted to really do, and Ash kind of alluded to it earlier, was we collect all the sort of data and statistics and research that we don't actually provide back to farmers at all. So the idea behind the inclusion of these milk sections into the insights report was just to try and provide farmers some more points that they can focus on within the system to make the farm a little bit more efficient. So I guess if we look at that next piece, Ash, focusing on the benchmarking. So what this is trying to do is just show farmers where they sit within their region. So obviously we've got a distribution curve here. So if you see this farm sitting on pretty much on 150,000, pretty much in the middle. So pretty promising. Doing quite well. Obviously lines up with our cooperative difference target of 150. And then next sort of graph is just showing, how that farms trended season on season. One of the pieces of feedback we got from farmers was that they found this really useful, just seeing, if they made any changes to their on-farm practices between seasons, just a good visual to show the effects of that. And then finally, obviously highlighting that dollar value. So what we've gone and done is linked in with some of the Dairy NZ research that focuses on basically the effect of subclinical cases that are present in the herd. So it sort of works on the theory that basically any herd with a cell count above that 100,000 potentially has some cases of subclinical mastitis present. And obviously when those cases are present, the cow is unable to produce to her optimum. So this is just trying to, I guess, put another piece together on why it's that important of keeping that cell count low. Cool. And then when we move into that milking efficiency, I guess the inclusion of that milk vat monitoring technology that we put on the Fonterra vats has given us quite a unique data set that we've been able to, I guess, link to some work that Dairy NZ and QCons have done in and around that milking efficiency piece. So what we've gone and done is linked the milk vat technology to shed size and type and cow numbers, and tried to, I guess, start that conversation around benchmarking performance. It's probably something quite new and potentially something a lot of farmers haven't thought about. So this graph here is just benchmarking this farm. So it's obviously within the benchmark group of 20 to 25 bale herringbones, and then it's gone and shown, a cows per hour metric, which, I guess needs to be taken into account with the other ones. If Ash moves down, we obviously move into that litres per cluster. So when we think about cows per hour, obviously once a day herds that are producing more milk at one milking, potentially that cows per hour is reduced a little bit. Similar to some of your high producing herds, if you've got cows doing large volumes, they're going to take a little bit longer to milk than some of your lower producing herds. And that's where using these two in conjunction is quite good. So when we move down to this bottom one, obviously litres per cluster per hour, that's just talking about how many litres are going through that cluster in the space of an hour. So it seems quite simple, but it's quite a good figure to think about. It's quite a good demonstration of efficiency. Obviously, the higher your litres per cluster per hour, you've got your cows flowing in, you're changing your cups over efficiently, the cups aren't sitting there idle, you're taking the cups off once the cow's finished. So yeah, quite a good driver of efficiency. And then also in that last piece, so this is just looking at linking some of that max T research to the actual performance. So when we looked at Fonterra, dairies on a whole, I think 85% of our herringbones were hitting that 80% efficiency, and only, were under 80% efficient. So obviously only 15% were hitting that 80% mark. And then also with our rotaries, I think we only had 6% that were hitting potentially 80% efficient. So it's just something a little bit different. Obviously not everyone's going to like that max T research, but it's just something else that, how efficient they can put cows through the shed, because it does take up a lot of time milking.
But yeah, Daniel, so max T is obviously we talked about that online before with some other speakers, but is that the only tool that we can look at to increase our efficiency, or is there other help available to guide us through this? Because I guess most farmers do what they've always done and they can't see the potential benefits. I mean, they might see it on paper here, but how do they identify what the benefits are?
No, so definitely, max T is not the only strategy, and that's probably one of the things we've shown here with benchmarking. A lot of farms aren't implementing max T, but you can also already see there's a bit of a variation between performance. So, just things like flow and milking routine can have a big impact. So we are in the process of trying to develop a bit of a service within Fonterra where we can go and help our farmers with that milking efficiency. Likewise, if they want to go and have a bit more of a look, there's a QR code and a link there too. But yeah, even just some of that routine stuff can save a bit of time on farm milking.
Good. Yeah, cool. Thank you. But the figures are there and they're really helpful. So thanks very much for that, Daniel.
Cool. Cheers, Noldy.
Great. Thank you. Good. Okay, now we're back to Ash now, I believe. Cool. Hi, Ash.
You sure are. Thanks,
Good.
Noldy. So I guess I should properly introduce myself. My name's Ash. I'm within the On-Farm Excellence team here at FarmSource, and I'm one of the vets on the team. So yeah, I'll be talking about the animals part of the insights report. So I'll start off here with the heat stress page. This is the first page. And one of the great things about New Zealand's farming systems is that we're an outdoor based environment. Our cows get to be in paddocks and enjoying fresh air and sunshine. The challenge that poses, though, is that at times of the year it is hot, and if we don't provide mechanisms for our cows to be able to cool themselves down, they can end up overheating a wee bit. So cows feel hotter sooner than humans do. So if you're hot, you can certainly guarantee your cows will be feeling it. So I guess the key things to focus in here is just to, again, double check that the numbers and your breed type are correct. So the breed type is important because Jerseys are actually a little bit more heat tolerant than Friesians and Kiwi Cross. So Kiwi Cross actually perform about the same as a Friesian. So if you've got a Jersey herd, you've probably got a slight advantage here. And what this is piece of information here, the calculation that goes into this one, is that we've partnered up with Dairy NZ in the work that they've done on heat stress in cattle and the impact that that's having both on milk production but also on cow well-being. And we've also partnered up with NIWA to gather some information about the climate. This is using a mixture of both actual and actual climate stations and virtual climate stations. So NIWA's got a grid that applies across the whole country down to, I think it's a 5-kilometre grid. So you can see there at the bottom the nearest climate station to the farm that's in the report. And probably good to just double check that the location on the map there looks about right. And then what this does is it looks at things like, yes, temperature and humidity are obviously key drivers. But if you think about other things that are important, wind, on a windy day, you tend not to feel as hot because you've got that cooling effect of the breeze, and also some of those sunshine hours, the sunshine intensity. So what that does is it models the size of your herd, the kind you've got, and applies that climate information to work out if you did nothing on your farm to mitigate heat stress. So if you didn't change anything, you didn't provide shade, you didn't have sprinklers. So if you did nothing, what impact could that be having in terms of lost milk production for your farm? And the range here is just because it's across 3 years worth of data. So in your best year for this farm, 5.5 grand, and in the most severe year, nearly 8. Yeah, so that one's sort of interesting and a bit new. And in testing these reports with farmers, this is actually something that farmers were really interested in, and yeah, it'd be cool to know whether your farmers are similar. Noldy, a lot of farmers are doing stuff on farm, so either providing shade or changing milking frequency, or maybe they've got sprinklers or shade cloth over the yards or something. So that sort of stuff isn't at the moment able to be accounted for in here. So just remembering that this number here is if you didn't do anything. So every little part that you're able to add on top of this will be helping to reduce that dollar figure.
So Ash, do you think in time that we'll be able to, if you provide shade to X number of cows on, it's quite an open sort of book though, isn't it? Really, because what you'd have to measure the temperature and say, okay, it's hot today, so they're under the trees for so long and they'll cool down by so much. But is it humid or whatever? So it's probably just about impossible to put some parameters around it, isn't it? Or
It's certainly quite complex if we look at the
Yeah.
inputs, like for us to say, well, if you provide X meters of shade per cow, what's the impact of that?
Yeah.
But I guess what we've got is some new technologies coming online. So things that go in and on cows that are actually providing us information about the temperature that that cow is currently experiencing. So if you're using things like the electronic rumen boluses or ear tags and collars and that sort of stuff, actually we might be able to start getting some data from there that gives us an indication of how many of your cows are experiencing higher temperatures. Cool.
Cool. Good. Okay.
Right. So the next page on the animals section is lameness. So as we know, this is can be a really impactful disease, I suppose, both in terms of the impact on animal well-being, but also cows that are lame or have reduced mobility tend not to eat as much. They're not going to be as productive in terms of milk. They're not as fertile. So it's got all these other downstream effects. So having a sore foot or sore leg means that you're less capable of doing all the other stuff that's really important. And I guess to point out up front, you might notice that this one doesn't have any benchmarking information around it. And I guess the challenge that we've got here is just in the way that farmers are recording and reporting this data. And there's a real spread, I guess, of how farmers approach this. So some farmers might be recording and reporting every single cow that's, even a grade 1 lameness, and all they might have done is just identified her, and then they've given her a rest for a couple of days and she's been fine, and they record that down as a lame animal. Whereas we've got other farmers that are only sort of reporting back the animals that they draft out and treat, for example. So maybe they've treated them with veterinary medicines, and those are the ones that they report. So we've got this real spread, big spread of results that come through each year that make it really difficult for us to benchmark because people are approaching it slightly differently. So instead of sort of benchmarking and making people feel that they sit somewhere where we're not necessarily that confident they do, what we're doing is just reporting back that, hey, every case of lameness that you have is potentially costing you something. Certainly that's going to be costing you in sort of time and treatment cost if you're having to do, pairing and blocking, and certainly if you're treating with veterinary medicines. But there's also all those other spin-offs that I talked about in terms of reduced milk production and lower fertility. So really this page is just about saying, hey, if you haven't thought about lameness before, there's a significant dollar value attributed to this, and we've really focused in on things that contribute to lameness rather than necessarily the number itself. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. Cool.
Right. So the last one here we've got is mastitis, and this is clinical mastitis cases basically, which is slightly different from what Daniel talked about before, which was the somatic cell count, which I guess is really about subclinical mastitis. So this one here, again, done a bit of benchmarking here, and it's not done on a peer group benchmarking. This one, it's actually taken across all Fonterra suppliers. So it pops you in context there with how everyone else is performing for that season. So yeah, for this farm here, a little bit on the higher end of what might be considered average, I suppose, or average for this year. So this is an area that, again, we highlight. Every case of mastitis that you've got is going to be costing you some money. This dollar figure here, again, links back to Dairy NZ's research, where really this is just about the treatment cost. So the cost of the withholding and the direct treatment cost associated with treating clinical cases. It's not accounting for that lost milk yield, which is covered in the somatic cell count bit. Yep.
Yeah.
So again, for this one here, some QR codes there. So if you have a look and you thought, oh wow, I thought I was doing quite well on mastitis, but I see that I do have a bit of room to move here. Where can I go and get some support? Scan those QR codes or type in those URLs, and get taken through to Dairy NZ stuff. And there's a whole swag of really valuable information that Dairy NZ have got regarding udder health. But also, as Daniel alluded to, here within FarmSource, we're trying to do a little bit more in terms of offering some milk quality support. So if that's something that your farmers are interested in, then by all means get in touch and ask what's available in terms of milk quality support.
Cool. Right. Thanks, Ash. Good. Excellent. Yep. Thank you. All right. I've got a couple of questions here, so we'll move on. This question here is directed to Gavin. Gavin, what's the difference between purchased nitrogen surplus and nitrogen leaching as an overseer?
Yeah, thanks, Noddy. That's a good question. So I get the purchased nitrogen surplus, as I touched on, that focuses on the amount of nitrogen that is introduced into the farm system, and through those purchase measures, so what's coming in fert and feed minus what leaves in productive output. So so that's the surplus of nitrogen. What overseer then does, if you like, is it does a similar thing in that it calculates a surplus, but it adds in what might be fixated from the atmosphere, and then it looks to apportion that that surplus to different losses. So how much will be lost to water, how much will be lost to the atmosphere, how much is tied up in the different end pools, etc., within the farm system. So it's actually trying to quantify and therefore apportion that loss out. What ours does is a more simple metric that it just looks at what's coming into the system, and then what leaves in those productive outputs, and then what's left. So it's the same type of metric, but just not looking to apportion it to a loss direction, if you like, or a channel.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Gavin. And another one here, I'm not sure who might answer this one, but are there any metrics in the pipeline that you might add or change in the report in the future? I don't know whether you want to take that one, Ash, or are there any metrics that in the pipeline that you might add or change in the report?
It might be good to maybe drag in Daniel on this one as well. But yes, we are always looking for other things that we could add value on, and things that we could draw into the report to be able to reflect back to farmers, but also that we'd love some input from farmers on that, I suppose, in terms of, are there things in particular that you'd see real value in being included in a report like this? So that would be my thoughts on it. I don't know if Daniel wants to give some more comments.
Yeah, no, probably got to echo what you're saying, Ash. Really keen for farmer input and feedback. If there's specific things that they think we could add, or insights that we could link in, definitely keen to go down that pathway. Some of the discussion we've had has been around reproductive performance. So there's plenty of opportunity. I guess it's just trying to work out what farmers want.
Yeah. Hey guys, I see this as a really valuable tool for benchmarking, because over the years in farming, Dairy NZ's had dairy base available, and where we enter all our financial data and physical data around the farm, and then at discussion groups we get together often, and we they pit you against peers in the region, just like this does, and then we can see where we can gain some efficiencies. So I see this as very similar to that. So it's a hugely valuable tool going forward. So I thank you for that. I might just have another question come up here on the milk quality section. So who did milk quality? That was you, Daniel, I think.
Yeah.
On the milk quality section, do I get anything out of this if my cell count's below 100,000?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess what we did was we looked at that opportunity of reducing your cell count down to that 100,000. So likewise, with on the other hand, if your cell count was already below that 100,000, what we've tried to do is highlight that risk, business risk to you, of your cell count increasing to 100. So when we took this out to farmers, and the few that we discussed it with that were under that 100, they wanted to show to their staff, obviously a lot of these are smaller herds that we're talking to, but they wanted to be able to show the risk to the business of, I guess, why they put so much emphasis on trying to keep that cell count low. So
Cool. And this question, this next one is very similar, and this is actually quite a goodie. Could you also include the additional payments or costs of not meeting the cooperative difference metrics, so such as not meeting the excellence target. So could you include in this report if you fail to hit the targets with the difference, what it's actually costing you, what the opportunity lost is? Is that a possibility?
Yep, definitely could. I think on that first page, and we probably skipped over it a little bit, but we talked about and sort of showed how much of those excellence metrics were hit. We talked about, I think, percentage of milk quality that was produced that hit the excellence target. So we could definitely look at putting a, I think we talked about percentage and number of days achieved. But yeah, if that was something that was wanted, we could look at putting a dollar value on that. Yeah,
Right.
so probably quite hard to see there, but
Yeah.
170 days and then 60% milk quality excellence.
Good. Hey, well, I've got no more questions coming, guys, but unless you got any closing comments from anyone, but I think this insights report, as I said before, it's summarised it all for us and gives us something to benchmark with our peers, and it's a valuable tool. And I like the fact that it's available to be used for us as part of our farm environment plan. So I really appreciate Fonterra's help in helping us work towards that. So thank you, team, for all you're doing and all you've done. And thank you one and all for your input today as speakers. We really appreciate it. And yeah, on behalf of all our Smash viewers and our Smash committee and our sponsors and Dairy NZ, our partner, we thank you for coming along and giving up some time. And I trust that our listeners have gained some more valuable insights into what you're trying to do. So thank you, team. Keep up the good work, and hopefully we'll be in touch again at some later date with any updates you might have. Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Cool.
And as to our speakers now, we've got a couple more events coming up. Next week, we've got an event at Gordonton at Jamie Haltane's place. That's on Tuesday the 30th. And there'll be one at Tariki in Taranaki. That's on the 2nd, and that's coming up. That's next week as well. So 2 field day events come out next week. So look forward to that. So on behalf of Smash, thank you guys for listening, for tuning in. Keep watching your inbox and your emails as to what future events might be coming up, or Facebook. But it's good to have you along, and we wish you all a very good afternoon. Thank you.